Welcome back to the Contractor Marketing Show. I'm your host, Matt Thibeau, and today we're sitting down with Jon Paramore. I'm super excited to bring to you guys this episode. A little bit about Jon is that he's a multiple seven-figure business owner. He's a mentor and a coach. He's involved in a roofing business doing about $60 million a year, and he's overcome a lot of challenges in life, including a bankruptcy. So we're going to dive into all of it here today. But Jon, thanks for being on the show today.
Yeah, bro. Appreciate you having me. And yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, so we're just going to dive right into things here and just give people a lot of really great advice. So let's take it back. Like right now, like a lot of people follow you on social media. You're doing like a lot of really big things. And let's just take it back though to the start is kind of like, what was the beginning of your entrepreneurial journey?
If you ask my parents, I was an entrepreneur ever since I was a little kid. I was always the kid, like, wanting to set up the lemonade stand, selling magazines, mowing people's grass, to make money in the summers, raking leaves, whatever. But in like the real world entrepreneur, I went to school for marketing, came out, was a marketing director for a real estate investment trust in St. Louis. They built apartment complexes all across the United States. I initially went on there, started there leasing apartments, and then started putting my marketing stuff to work there, and then started helping them fill apartment complexes that were struggling. And then they asked me to do that for a while. And then in the year 2000, it was like the fall of 2000, spring of 2001, St. Louis got smoked by still, I think, the third or fourth largest hailstorm on record. It brought a lot of guys in from out of town. They started leasing apartments where I worked. And I started asking them questions like, hey, I see you're driving a pretty nice truck, got a couple nice cars. Like, what do you guys do for a living, kind of thing? And they were just like, we go across the United States and put houses back together, property back together after storm. And so I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And I got to know a couple of the guys, and one of them said, you kind of have that gift of gab. You can chat, might have a little good sales ability. So you should do it part-time, see if you like it. So I went out with these guys on a Saturday. The first Saturday I went out, I signed 13 contingencies or subject twos or whatever people call it. And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. And these guys were like, damn, nobody does that. Like, you don't know anything about roofing. They kind of gave me a little pitch to run with. They showed me how to get the document signed up. And I was like, whatever, I'll go do it again the next weekend and just see what happens. Signed another 8. And also I came in late to that storm, right? So this was like midsummer of that year. And so I, like 21, 22 contingency agreements within the first couple of weeks. So I sat down with the guy I got to know pretty well. And I'm like, what does this equate to? And he's like, it's about $30,000, $40,000 in commissions. And so, I'm a kid right out of school making 60, 55, 60 grand a year, full benefits, 401k, the whole thing. And I'm like, I can make more in a month than I could make in a year doing this. Why would I not just do this full time? So entrepreneur spirit, balls to the wall. I go in and put 2 weeks into my job, quit, full all in to this selling roofing and siding. Didn't know anything about it. Told my parents, they thought I was nuts. They're like, how do you give up a steady job, steady income to go sell roofs of all things? But that first time I brought home that big check, I think it was just north of 15 grand and showed my parents. They were like, holy shit, this is legit. Like this, if you can do this full time and make this kind of money, this is pretty crazy. So fast forward about a year and a half later, myself and the guy I got to know really well went in on Saturday. We picked our commission checks up on Saturdays. We go there, the doors are locked up, the sign's off the door, the people are gone. We try to call the owner, anywhere near to be found. We don't know where he went. So we just decided, we had a handful of customers still left that needed to be serviced. They weren't all the way through the process. So myself and that guy were like, we'll just do it ourselves. So that's where the entrepreneurial journey started for me. I went from full-time job to selling full-time. About a year and a half later, right into business full-time. So that's how everything got started.
That's super cool, dude. It sounds like you almost started off with like the sales and marketing foundation and then got into the contracting. Whereas like, I feel like a lot of guys are almost kind of the opposite there. So it sounds like you kind of started off like a stud, basically, like right off the bat with the sales and marketing side, and then you
Yeah.
kind of just like fell into the contracting opportunity, eh?
Yeah, I would say that's 100% accurate. And also, now that I've been doing this for 25 years, that's one of the greatest things looking back, one of the greatest skills that I learned, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm a big believer of like, if you can generate a lead and you can generate a sale, that's a big part of it, man. Because you could be a killer at the operations, killer at the production side, killer at the hiring side. But if you yourself don't know how to generate a lead and don't know how to generate a sale, if the business starts to fall apart, it's not the operations and all that other stuff that's gonna keep you going. It's being able to generate a lead and generate a sale. So yeah, that's a really cool skill set that no matter what happens, it doesn't matter the economy that we're in or any of that stuff, right? I always know I can generate a lead and generate a sale. So
Absolutely, 100%. We'll dive more into that in a sec, because I think a lot of contractors, like I do a lot of calls with them where they'll be like, man, it doesn't make sense. Like there's this hotshot new kid in my town, who's like doing $1 million, $2 million a year. And like, I've seen his work. He's not even a great painter. He's not even like, good at what he does. I've been doing this for 20 years. I'm like amazing at what I do. How come I'm not making the same amount of money? I'm like, bro, it's because like you've mastered delivery. That's great, but it's marketing and sales now,
Yeah.
And for a lot of guys, I think that's kind of like a bit of like a paradigm shift,
It is. We've consulted a lot of people since I sold my contracting company in 2014. We've been doing consulting work for 10, almost 15 years at this, 10, almost 11 years at this point. And the cool thing the one thing we found that's really, really consistent is there's a giant separator between the guys that have that, what I would label as like the sheer willingness to get out and hustle and grind and kind of pay your dues, and the guys that like have that, what you're talking about, they have the fulfillment side mastered, but they never mastered the side of like that hustle and grind. Like it doesn't matter who I am, doesn't matter what age I am, any of that stuff. I am not afraid to go out and knock a door or get my hands dirty or do the hard work. And I think that's a mindset that a lot of guys that get into this business are just thinking like, I'll go hire a sales manager, I'll go hire great sales guys, but then they can't speak from integrity. And most sales guys don't want to follow people who can't speak from integrity. So it makes it really difficult.
Yeah, I think at a certain point, you need to take your service and get it to a point where you're like, this is good enough now. I'm happy with this. Now I got to take this and just like throw this at the wall at like every single person and promote it. And, and I think that's kind of like a little bit of a mindset shift for a lot of business owners. But, okay, so let's just kind of like continue the timeline here. So you jump into roofing. You're pretty good at sales and marketing, like right off the bat. You're rocking and rolling. You're doing this. What was kind of like the first like stumbling block for you where you were a little bit like, oh shit, like what have I got myself into here?
Yeah, so great question. About 2 years into us doing this together, my brother-in-law was paying attention to us, and he owned a large commercial contracting company. So they did a lot of real estate development on the commercial side. And he's like, man, you guys I see your signs. What do you do in a month in sales? And so we started talking about that. And he's like, how much money are you making, like profit from this? It's just you and like 3 or 4 other guys. You should be killing it with the amount of sales you're bringing in. And I really wasn't, right? I wasn't making as much money as I was when I was actually just selling by myself. So he's like, let me just kind of look at things and maybe do an audit, like give me access to your QuickBooks and, things of that nature. And he quickly found out pretty fast that the guy that was running the production, which was the guy that was my buddy that I got to know, and we built this company together, was actually over ordering the jobs and then asking the suppliers to write a check back to a different organization and saying that it was like our profit accounts, right? So essentially he found him embezzling money in the company. And so that was kind of my first like, oh shit moment. Like I can't just be like, this is a great skill set that I have in the marketing and the sales, and I can generate a lot over here, but I also can't be ignorant to what's going on in the background, right? Like I got to be a responsible business owner and pay attention to the operations. I have to know how to do that stuff. I got to know actually how to order siding and roofing and, all that stuff. I can't just leave that solely up to someone else. And so that was the first real eye opener to me. Like, I need to be a multifaceted business owner, not just one dimensional, right? Like I need to know the marketing and the sales, but also the operations, the fulfillment, and the hiring side of things. So, that's kind of where I figured all that out.
Man, that's crazy. That must have been such like a gut-wrenching moment for you of just realizing like this other guy that you've been working with and trusting has just been, that's crazy. So correct me if I'm wrong. And then that kind of led over a series of events, I'm sure, but like you did get yourself into a situation where you went bankrupt as well, if I'm correct.
That was many years down the road and many storms down the road. And I'll walk you through that a little bit. So, so we traveled, once I went into business with my brother-in-law, and then eventually he got bought out by some other guys that I became good friends with, and we partnered up and went into stuff together. We traveled basically to 19 different states. We worked a lot of different storms, hailstorms, tornadoes, hurricanes, all of that stuff, and started making a crazy amount of money. Like we really figured it out, like the right methods, systems, procedures, all of that good stuff. And I think, like as entrepreneurs, that one of the biggest mistakes we tend to make is like we get really good at something and then we get bored. And then instead of just like really staying in the monotony of the basics and the boring stuff and becoming like lethal at those things, we tend to be like, oh, well, I got some money, so I can go do other things, right? You hear all the nonsense myths, like you need 7 streams of income and da, 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 da. That's just a bunch of horse shit, right? Like what you need is to be incredibly disciplined at the basics. And when the basics get boring, know that you need to like even level yourself up more and become even more disciplined to the basics, right? Don't go start investing in real estate and all that shit until you have that stuff on lock. And then you got leaders in place that can handle that stuff. But that doesn't mean be an absentee business owner. Okay. So I tell you all that because that's exactly what happened, right? So I running good. The business has kind of run itself. I go get diversified and start doing real estate deals. We were tearing houses down and building houses back up before, but back in the day when 08, 09, when the economy was incredible, right? So basically what happened is the bubble burst, right? And so we're running a really large contracting company, and literally overnight the bubble burst, and we got to start covering big interest loans, property issues, all these things start to happen in a blink. And I didn't have the best attorneys at the time, and I kind of got scared, and one thing led to another, and they're basically like, if you don't liquefy your company and tear this thing down, you could end up in jail, whatever. And that wasn't actually the case, because what we were doing was not illegal, come to find out. But we ended up having to file bankruptcy on about $6 million worth of debt. So it was not cool. It was not fun. It took me about 3.5 years to understand that I was not a bankrupt individual. That was not my identity. It was just like a series of bad decisions that ultimately led to us having to make that decision to like close the company and tear it down. Right. So I'm grateful that I learned. I mean, if you go back, I know we're kind of like giving you the very high level version of all of this, but if you go back from when I went from being a full-time employee to sales to being a business owner to several years later going bankrupt, it sucked at the time. Like it was horrific at the time. Right. But it was also one of the greatest things that could happen to me, because I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about people in general, like the loyalty of people, what that looks like. What are they actually loyal to? I learned a lot about mindset. I learned a lot about adversity and what it takes to overcome. So it was, look, hindsight's 2020. It was definitely a blessing, right? I wouldn't have said that in the moment, but there was a lot of humility that came from it, and a truckload of lessons for sure.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, I know if something like that were to happen to myself, like getting yourself to the point of having the confidence again to be like, oh, I'm going to go out and start another business. Like that must have really like shattered your self-confidence though in yourself to be like, no, I can totally do this, because I feel like I haven't been in big business for long enough to be able to like look back at a series of like, I've been doing it for 7 years, what we're doing. And so I haven't had like, a series of wins and failures though that are pretty significant to be able to look back and be like, oh, like I've done it in the past, I could do it again. Like when you were in that moment with like the bankruptcy and everything kind of just like, fell down to ground zero, so to speak, like what were some of the mindset things that you were kind of bringing yourself through? Like, I think it'd be kind of cool if we just go into that just a little bit.
Yeah. So I went from so I had a brand new baby, just moved into a brand new house, and when all this is happening, so I have to short sell a home. I have to move a brand new baby into an apartment for a while, for a period of time before we eventually end up moving in a different house. I had to liquidate my organization. So ultimately, where I find myself is completely depressed, right? Like how did this happen, right? A lot of questioning and how did this happen? What led to this? Why is this happening? Honestly, questions like, God, why are you punishing me? Like, what did I do? Right? That victim-y type of mindset for a while.
Yeah.
And then what I realized pretty quickly is I'm like, I thank God I had some really great people around me at the time that were just like, bro, but all of these things, right? The house, the cars, the this and that, it's all gone, but you still have the skill, right? You still have the things that you learned along the way. That didn't get taken from you. The things got taken from you, but the rest of it still lives in you, right? So what I did right away, probably within about, 4 months or so of going through that, is I went and got a sales job. Like, talk about ultimate humility, right? So I'm making a truckload of money as an owner to like, oh shit, I got to go sell. Like, I can sell. I know I can make money selling. So that's what I do. I go to work for a small mom and pop company, just selling. I went in there and they asked me a bunch of questions. I think they were a little intimidated because I knew a lot about a lot. And they were like, I don't know if we want to bring this guy in, because the horror stories you hear of like guys who former business owners, you bring them in, they take bad habits, they put them in the culture, but they were like, oh, we'll give them a shot. So I sold for that company, and I took that company from 950,000 to 6.5 million in the first 18 months I was there. And they went from them asking me to sell to them asking me to be a sales manager, to talks about partnerships and, things of that nature. So in a relatively short period of time, 18 months or so, I kind of started feeling it again, right? Because I'm like, they're right. Like I did this thing and I take ownership of this thing. It sucked. It was terrible, but it doesn't mean I can't do it again, right? It doesn't mean that I don't have to start over. I just have to start where I stopped, right? Where things came. And so that's kind of the mentality that I eventually took on, was like, I definitely messed up, but that doesn't make me a messed up human. I definitely went bankrupt, but that doesn't make me a bankrupt human. Right. So that was just something that, working with a lot of really great people, having a lot of good people around me, people encouraging me of like, you can still do this kind of thing. That's what it took to kind of rebound and just get things moving again.
That's super cool. It seems like as we're talking, you're really good at like the whole scaling up portion of things. Like, it seems like you really know how to turn on the marketing and sales engine. And we can kind of dive into of like what you're doing, like fast forward through all those challenges to what you're doing today. And like, you're doing a lot of different things, but I kind of just want to hear from you, just talking a little bit about like, what are some of the key things that someone like you is looking at when you're starting to scale a company? Because it seems like, just based off of like what we've been talking about right now, that's something that you've kind of always had as like a little bit of like an inherent intuition and skill. Yeah. Because I'm just curious, like, just, we can go more specific, but just at a high level first, like, let's say that, a contractor has like a small business, maybe they're doing like around $1 million and they're trying to grow. Like, what are some of the things that you're diving into with your perception of like, how do we scale this thing?
Yeah. So I'll try to give you the quick version, right? Because we could probably do an entire podcast just on scale. But so I want you to look at it in it's several phases with like, think of it like with a picture in your mind of a mountain. Okay. The hardest part is at the base, right? As it's the biggest part, it's the widest part. It could be like, let's just say part of the bottom part of the mountain's 100 feet tall, but it's also like 1,000 feet wide, right? So what I what I like to break things down to is success does not reward the wrong people. And so what that means is you're going to be challenged repeatedly to see if you are willing to pay the price and put forward the sacrifice to get to the top, right? So it actually, as you go up in levels, it actually gets more simple because you get your ass beat at the foundation. So what happens to most people, most small business owners, is they get worked so hard at the foundation and they're not expecting the price that comes with building something big, that because they're not used to that level of pain, sacrifice, energy, whatever you call it, they stop at the foundation. That's where they end up stopping. They end up getting stuck at the foundation because they're like, damn, if it's this hard here, how hard is it here? Well, how hard is it going to be there? Well, how hard is it going to be? It's got to be real hard to get up here then, right? So they get stuck in that mindset of like, this hurts real bad, so I don't really want to go any further because I'm sure it's going to hurt way worse. The reality is, in that 0 to about 10 million, just speaking of a roofing company in general, that 0 to 10 million is excruciating. It requires a ridiculous amount of sacrifice, time away from your kids, time away from your family. You're going to take a physical toll from it. You're going to take a mental ass beating from it. That's just the reality of it, right? But if you go into it knowing that, and along the way, you do this thing I call practice pain daily, right? You're practicing the pain daily. You're going to like the gym, you're reading, you're learning, you're growing, you're expanding. You're trying to find things that you don't know and getting around people that can teach you the things that you don't know. You're hiring, for all intents and purposes, you're hiring a coach or a mentor or whatever who's already gotten their ass beat and asking them, what pitfalls can I avoid to not have to go through the same pressure and all that stuff? Now, there's still the price, man. There's this thing that's called the piper is going to get paid no matter what. And that's success asking you, are you willing to pay the price to get the reward? Most people, if you watch them on social media, bro, they want to talk about getting started. They're like, oh, I'm about to start a badass fitness journey. And everybody's like, oh, good for you. It's good for you. But then they don't have the satiety and the discipline to sustain through the fitness journey to actually earn the best applause at the end. You see what I'm saying? And that's business ownership 101, bro. Like they won't do they just want the claps for the, look how pretty this is, and look at this car I bought, and look at this house I bought, and whatever. That shit is easy. That's the easy part. The hard part is, can you sustain it? And it's the willingness to sustain over time that is scaling, right? So here's the crazy part. If guys could just take this one thing away from this podcast today, right? Business itself is not hard. It's not hard, bro. What makes it hard is we take our personal beliefs and our personal problems and we cram them inside the business. And then our limiting beliefs become everybody else's limiting beliefs. And that's what limits the business. But if we as business owners say, if we constantly build a culture, and the culture is we're going to go do more, we're going to expand farther, we're going to continue to grow, we're going to continue to learn, and we're going to continue to win the whole time along the way, regardless of what it takes. Whatever it takes is what's necessary. That's the price we're going to pay, whatever it takes. And if at any point in time we're scaling this bad boy and you don't have what it takes anymore to go on this journey, the journey gets too hard for you, just holler at me and I will stop and let you off the bus. Like that's the ownership, or the mindset and ownership has to have. We are stewards of people at every single level, and not all the people that start with us at the foundation are going to be the people that grow with us at the end. So as long as we know that, it's going to be just fine. So in short, right, foundation is the hardest part. That's that 0 to 10, bro. I know I'm going to have to like grind this shit out. I'm going to have to bootstrap it. I'm going to have to figure out a lot of things. I'm going to make a truckload of mistakes. I'm going to look like an idiot. And as long as I can reconcile that as I go, I'm okay with it, man. I don't need validation. I don't need other people's approval. I have a vision. I'm going to build the vision. It's going to hurt like hell. But I know once this foundation is set and this culture is set, and I have a group of believers that believe in the vision because I paid the price to make the foundation set, they will start to believe that the next level is also possible. And then we can scale it a level. And then we all start to believe, oh shit, the next one might actually be possible too. And then we can scale the next one, right? So like I was telling before we started recording, I've been part of an organization now that we helped grow from 10. It'll finish this year at 60 million. And I'm dead serious when I tell you, when I sat in there and talked to the owner at the first time, the only difference from 10 to 60, the only difference, processes, systems, all that stuff, right? I get that, has been a significant mindset of belief in I can do this. I can do this, right? And these people with me can do this. And we're going to take a lot of people and do this thing, right? It's crazy. But,
wow, dude, that's super cool. Like immediately what I'm thinking to myself is like, are there any like actionable things that you're doing to build up that belief? Like you were saying, like 0 to 10 million is just like grinding through like pain, blah, blah, blah. Like, are there any specific things that, because I know you work with a lot of business owners and what you're doing today with the Smash Co, your company there.
Yeah.
So are there any like specific things that you're doing for belief, or is it kind of just like suck it up, buttercup, like hit the payment every day? Like what
you got it. So listen, there's gotta be incremental wins along the way, right? It's that scaling. People think like, what do I need? More sales guys? What do I need? More apps people? What do I need? Better crews? All that is true, but it's also the incremental wins along the way. It's little tiny things, man. So like, as an example, if I don't have an org chart in place and I don't know, so I have this grand vision, but I don't really know what people I need on my team. Well, let's go build an org chart so you can actually see it. And then we build an org chart of like what's current and what's future, what's current and what's future. Now, you don't want to go too far in the future because then that seems really far away. So we're going to build an org chart for one step into the future. Who's the person we're going to add to it? And then we need some workflow stuff, right? So how are we going to make this thing happen? So what's the vision? What's the vision? Where are we going, right? I use this analogy all the time, right? So you've flown on an airplane before, I would assume, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you got on an airplane and the pilot came over a PA system and he said to you, I don't know where we are. I don't know where we're going, but I just know this is going to be a hell of an airplane ride. Are you staying on that airplane? No, you're not. So this is what entrepreneurs do to their people, though. How do you get people to buy into a vision that the owner themselves can't even cast?
Oh, that's good. That's good.
So you got to have clear vision, man, because the people can't get clear belief without clear vision. And then the clear vision's got to have a clear way, a clear path, right? So I got a clear vision. I got a clear path. Now I can build a clear process of how I'm going to actually make this thing happen. I'm telling you, dude, the business stuff is not hard. It's not hard. It's where this thing gets complicated is when you go, got a clear vision. Now I need a clear path. Then they look at the path and feelings and emotions enter into the path. That's when it gets complicated because success doesn't give a shit about how you feel about it. What it cares about is, do you know where you're going? Yes. Do you have a path? Yes. Are you willing to do the work on the path? That's it. Are you willing to do the work that's required to get there? If the answer is yes, we're good to go. Doesn't matter. So I used to tell people this all the time. You got to do the work regardless of how you feel, right? If you wanted to be shredded or you wanted to be a muscle builder or you wanted to be whatever, it requires a certain amount of work.
Yeah.
And in that work, it gives no shits about how you feel. It doesn't care. It's just like, I'm going to give you dude, here's what you want. Here's the work required. Do the work.
Yeah.
Well, today it's raining, or today my dog died, or what? Success is sitting over in the corner going, I don't give a shit, man. Wow. I don't care. It's still required.
Yeah. This is so good. There's so many directions that we could go with this, but something I just want to kind of comment on is like kind of the overarching theme is you keep talking about like vision and how important that is. And it's like sometimes when I'm talking to contractors, they'll be like, yeah, so like here you are, here's where you're at right now in your company. Where do you want to be in the next like 12 months from now? And they'll be like, oh, I don't know, man, like making more money would be great. And I'm like, okay, like that's not really like a real goal. That's not helpful for me. Yeah. And then also I'll notice a lot of contractors will be like, man, no one wants to work anymore. Like I can't keep employees. And I just kind of had a bit of an aha moment when you were like, oh, like that airplane analogy. It's like, well, if they're just like, yeah, man, you want to come work for me and do some shitty work for like $20 an hour?
That's right. It's not that nobody wants to work. It's nobody wants to work for you. And that's because you don't have the vision, dude.
Right.
Because listen, I'll tell you what, when you build an organization, let's just say 10 million, when you're building an organization, that's on people's radar. That's on the sales reps' radar. That's on all the sales reps in the market see this company go from 10 million to 30 million. And then they're like, holy shit, there's something that owner of that company is doing something that the owner of my company is not doing.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then guess what? That guy becomes the owner that nobody wants to go to work for because they see this guy over here killing it. They're like, he might have a better destination. I think I'm gonna go check it out. And then it becomes an attraction game. He's built a culture. People they see it. There's no recruiting involved in that. At 60 million, there's no recruiting involved in this. People are knocking on the door and they're like, hey, how do we sign up to go to work for you guys?
Yeah. That's really cool. Yeah. I know that you're like pretty big into personal branding. Like you've got a lot of social media channels and stuff like that going on. Like, do you think that definitely helps too in like recruiting talent? Like, what are some of the advantages that you're getting from like personal branding in your companies? Like, whether it's for a marketing perspective, recruitment, like you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it makes it, I think people so full transparency, that's kind of who I am. I think people fuck marketing up wrong all the time, right? And especially when it comes to personal branding and whatever, especially in the way that things shift so fast, right? Things shift so fast. We're now going into a totally different climate than we were in, I don't know, just a few months ago, right? We're headed into a different climate. So right now, people are done with the fake. They're done with the hype. They're done with the noise. They're done with the clashing. They're done with the cancel bullshit. They're just done with that, right? What they want is truth, and they want reality, and they want consistency, and they want a story. And so if you can use your social media and you can show them like, here's what I'm doing, and here's what I got going on, and it could be, listen, okay, I don't know if you have kids, but I have kids, right? My two youngest daughters love to watch nonsense, right? So they'll get onto YouTube and they'll watch these shows where they're like a little kid playing with toys. And it's like, if you're doing anything social media related, how do you not learn from that raw lesson? That freaking video has 8 million views from kids, right? And I'm like, what is this guy doing special? And then I have this aha moment and I'm like, nothing. They're being real. Like they're just really playing with a toy that they like, and other kids like to see people be authentic who like other things, and that kid's getting enjoyment from it. So that kid gets a dopamine hit from the enjoyment that person is getting from. So it's like what people need on social media and on the branding side of things is to have a brand that is real, that is authentic, that shows the good things, that shows the bad things, that's willing to talk about the shit, that's willing to talk about the wins, the losses, everything in between. But so many people are so afraid of the judgment that comes with it that they just won't do it. And in turn, they're hurting themselves. And they're like, oh, well, I own a roofing company. Does that matter to my clients? I'm like, yeah, dude, people want to do business with real ass people.
Yeah.
They don't want to do business with people that have to posture and put up this persona, and it feels gross. You know what I'm saying? So that's that's what, in a nutshell, that's the branding side of things. 101 is just, you got to be you. Your brand as an organization, as a company, should represent who you are anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. 100% too. Like, yeah, we do a lot of Facebook ads, and what's working really well right now, and what we're finding are like really personalized selfie type videos of the owner of the company, just being like, what's going on, guys? We're doing this right now. And like, some clients are all gun ho for it because they're more salespeople and they're down for that. But man, we have to pull some teeth for the other guys, man. We're doing like some AI stuff, blah, blah, blah. And, I have a training that I put them all through when they first come on. And I just basically say, like, commit to being like a social media person, like commit to like doing this properly and putting yourself out there. And like what you were saying, like being authentic and blah, like we have some scripts and stuff to help people. So we'll give them that. But I tell them, I say, like, the scripts are just there just so you have like an outline. But like, if you do the take, man, and like your hair is like kind of weird or whatever, or like, you're not wearing a perfect shirt, like, dude, who cares? Like, just get it out there, like just produce, you know what I mean? And so I think that's kind of the mindset that they need to have, but a lot of contractors are kind of held back from, because they're like, as soon as you turn a camera on, they're like, oh, like I need to be perfect, you know, and that's not what it's about.
No, it's not. It's not. It's actually, I mean, the guys that we're working with right now, most of them are, the least thing that they're worried about is being perfect, right? The most thing they're worried about or focused on is being themselves. Because why would they portray a certain image and then show up to the marketplace and be something different? You know what I mean? Like, why would they, if you and I acted a certain way, and then I show up into the marketplace and I go to knock someone's door or talk to somebody, and the first thing they say to me is, wow, you're a lot different than you are when you are on social media or on camera or whatever. That I have an inauthenticity problem going on, right? They can feel the lack of integrity in the two things. So you just can't do that, man. Like I rap with you the same way I would rap with you if we were sitting in person, or if there were 10 people, you know, that we were going to go talk to together at the same way. So you got to be you. I think that's really important.
Yeah, and it definitely helps. Like, you know, we were talking about like team building, but it also helps a lot with sales. Is like, you know, it took me a while to figure out with sales is that you're not like trying to convince someone else of something. You're trying to convince them basically that you're convinced. It's like your own self-conviction into like that you believe everything. And so, yeah, like going back to the, you know, just being authentic, I think that the more authentic you can be in like sales conversations or on social media and stuff, it does really, really help. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially, I mean, in the world, like you're talking about the world of sales, it takes me being okay with me in order to be able to sell them anything. You know what I mean? Like if I'm not good with me, how are they going to be good with me? The best sales guys that I've ever come across, you know, the one thing they have that's the greatest asset and skill that you could ever have is they know who they are, right? And they're good with who they are. And that's what makes them really great at sales, because they don't get they're like aversion proof, right? The homeowner on the other side, or whoever it is on the other side, doesn't like who they are. That's their problem, not a me problem.
Yeah.
Right. So they don't take that so personally and then bury their head in the sand and get all upset. Like, I got to be somebody I'm not in order to get people to buy from me. No, bro, you got to be you and be okay with you. And then people will buy from you.
Yeah.
Like, that's the way it is.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, like just going back a little bit, you were saying that like really scaling a company comes down to just like people bring a lot of their own personal problems and stuff into the mix and such like that. Would you say that for, you know, let's say like a painting company doing $1 million a year and they're trying to scale, like, would you say that some of the things that would come into play for them are just like the mindset issues?
Yeah.
You know, maybe because this is the Contractor Marketing Show, maybe you could talk a little bit about some of the specific kind of like marketing, bad beliefs basically that people adopt around that stage when they're trying to scale. Because I have seen that where a lot of people like plateau with their marketing, or they're like, oh, like we're spending too much on marketing, or okay, like I don't want to build too much of a sales team because we're paying too much in commissions. Like maybe you see where I'm kind of going with this.
Do you see? But if you hear the real problem and what you're saying, it's actually none of those things. It's not that we're spending too much in marketing. We might pay out too many. It's the limiting belief, right? That's because all of what you just stated is it's them putting a limit on them before they actually understand what's going to happen, right? And most of the time that's because there's an ego involved, or there's lack of knowledge involved, or lack of wisdom involved. They don't know what they don't know, and they're terrified of it. So what they do is insert a bunch of limits in between all the stuff. And then it's like justifying bad behavior, right? It's like justifying limiting behavior. It's like, I'm not going to go do it because this, which makes them internally feel better about not going to do it. Yeah. Right. So it's the actual, what I have to do first in those situations is get them to see both sides. What's the cost of not doing it? What's the cost of doing it? Right. And then weigh those things out. Right. So, okay. So let's say $1 million company is not hard to build. I could build that shit in about 5 weeks. Okay. So let's be real, right? Like very transparent conversation. So you have $1 million company and you're afraid that if you go spend too much, then the company could collapse, or you could overspend, or whatever, insert whatever limit is there. Right. Yeah. Okay. So what would make you more comfortable in spending that money? Well, I would have to know that I'm going to get a guaranteed return. Okay, perfect. So how do you know, how would you ever know that you're going to get a guaranteed return? Well, I don't know anything about marketing, so I don't know that. There we go. So your real fear is you don't know shit about marketing, and you're afraid if you go spend $1 in marketing, it's not going to get a return. That fear comes in the unknown, bro. It's not the dollars that you're about to spend. It's the fear of the unknown, right? So why don't we do this? Why don't I teach you at the same time that I'm doing it on how to do it, so you feel better about it and you realize that it actually does work. And when it starts to work, you're going to pay me double because I'm now teaching you how to do it. And then we're going to scale this shit together. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's rarely the thing.
Yeah.
It's rarely the thing. It's usually there's an underlying like limiting belief or fear that's got a hold of them. And that's why they can't scale it. That's why they won't scale it. The guys that scale it are just, they're just like, I'm going to come up against something I don't know, and it's going to be scary, but I'm going to push through it anyway, because that's what's required.
Yeah. I think that takes a certain level of like humbleness though, to be like, that's scary to me. I don't understand that at all. I'm going to go learn this, and like, I'm going to be an idiot basically. You know what I mean? And I think that's pretty scary for a lot of people.
Yeah. And there's two ways in this day and age, dude. You can either go figure it out on your own, which is the less expensive, more time consuming method, or you can find somebody that knows it and pay them to collapse time. Right. Yeah. But what you don't want to do is ever be in this space of like, well, I'm going to pay somebody $5,000. They're going to do my marketing, blah, 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 blah. And then get to the end of it and be like, oh, this guy screwed me. Well, if you didn't, in the space of paying him $5,000, if you didn't take the time to learn what he was doing or how he was doing it or whatever, you just screwed yourself. You just taught yourself a very expensive lesson. So you didn't actually even get screwed. You just got a $5,000 lesson. Yeah. Right. So it's very, very rarely do I actually ever come up against something that is like black and white, legit, like numbers driven, something that's like, here's why we can't scale. We can't scale this company. Right. Show me the math. I don't care about how you feel about it. I don't care about what you think about it. Just give me the numbers. Let's look at the numbers, right? And then make decisions from there.
Man, that was so good, dude. So good. I feel like we could keep talking and keep going for, like days on this, but we only have so much time, and I only got you so much time here. But two last things, I guess, is kind of like anything else to share on this so far about what we've been talking about. We've been talking about a lot of cool stuff with mindset. Like, I've been loving the topics. And then the last thing would just be like, where can people follow you? If someone's listening to this and like, yo, this guy switched on, like, I want to learn more about all this stuff, where can they follow you?
Yeah. So I have an old podcast. You can find it if you go down to like iTunes and you type in Go to War. Okay. My Go to War podcast will show up. It might come up as there's a couple different things. It could come up as Drop the Hammer. That's kind of the more recent one that we did, and we built Go to War. We buried the Go to War podcast on the back of that. Go to War was mostly mindset, about the mindset that I use to become an entrepreneur, build a business, overcome adversity, bankruptcy, all that stuff. So that's mindset driven. Drop the Hammer side of it is more business driven. But we stopped the DTH podcast about a year or so ago, and we're about ready to release a podcast called Whatever It Takes. Myself and another really high performing entrepreneur about to put this bad boy out. In fact, we haven't told anybody about it. This is kind of like, the first time I'm even mentioning it. But it's going to be pretty epic. We're going to be really focused on the mindset and the business tactics that it takes to scale and do it the right way. Right. And I'm going to be talking about a lot of the things that I messed up along the way. I'm certain he will too. But we just want to see guys win, especially going into, now we got a new president, all that stuff, right? So going into 2025, we just want to see a lot of people win. And so that's what this podcast is really going to be about. But you can find Jon, it's Jon, Paramore, Paramore. You can put that into Facebook. You can Google it. You can, whatever. And honestly, if you Google it, it's cool. There's a lot of bad things out there too. You guys can read those things too. Like I said, I'm very transparent. A lot of that stuff is incredibly old, and it's part of my journey. So have at it if you want to read it. But there's a lot of really cool resources out there for you too, that you guys can get access to. You can go to thesmashco.com as well if you want to look me up a little further.
Amazing. Well, yeah, man, I love following you. I love all your posts and all the value that you give. So, dude, thanks a lot for being on the show. It was an absolute pleasure. And yeah, thanks for listening, guys.
All right. Thanks for having me.